welcome to another episode of Mind to Five. You'll notice that I'm flying solo. My co-host, Daniel Moeller, couldn't make it this time, and that'll happen. We both got crazy schedules, keep us busy, but you usually catch us on the big topics that we want to discuss together. Though this episode's topic is a big one for me, my top 5 favorite Guillermo del Toro flicks. In honor of his 11th feature film, Nightmare Alley, drops in theaters on December 17th. He's adapting William Lindsay Gresham's novel, which has already been adapted once before in Edmund Golding's 1947 film of the same name. So let's get started. Let's see. Honorable mentions, we usually do 2, at least we did in the other episodes, so we'll probably do 2 at least moving forward, are Devil's Backbone and Kronos. Kind of his take on ghosts and his take on vampires, respectively. So let's go on with the top 5. Coming in at number 5, Crimson Peak. 2015 is when it came out. It's his Del Toro's gothic romance, starring Mia Wasikowska, Tom Hiddleston, and Jessica Chastain. It's about an American heiress who is romanced by Hiddleston's baronet/inventor, with Chastain playing his over-involved in his love life sister. Eventually, the heiress, played by Mia Wasikowska, I think I'm pronouncing her name right, and the baronet are wed, and the trio return to England, where the atmosphere of the flick gets completely enveloped in the trappings of gothic haunted house story. Del Toro does amazing things with the color red in this flick, from some of the ghosts to the clay that's seeping up around the manor. Just good lord, such an atmospheric movie. Being gothic romance, not for everybody, but I dug it. Standout performance in that one is Jessica Chastain. And I mean, there's not a bad performance in the movie. You got Charlie Hunnam and Jim Beaver both playing really standout, secondary characters. But there's one scene, and I don't want to spoil any of these, so I'm going to be a little vague, but there's a scene with Jessica Chastain where involving a blade that kept me on the edge of my seat. She did a fantastic job in that scene. But Crimson Peak, that's my number 5. Number 4, 2006's Pan's Labyrinth. Kind of a fairy tale parable, starring Ivana Baquero, Sergi Lopez, Ariadna Gil, and Maribel Verdú. It's about a 10-year-old Ophelia who's traveling with her pregnant and sickly mother to meet her stepfather, a captain who's hunting down rebels in the Spanish Civil War. This is kind of Del Toro's second flick set during the Spanish Civil War. And he always said that this one was, the Devil's Backbone being the first one, that this one was kind of a spiritual successor to that, if not a direct sequel. Anyway, soon after they arrive, Ophelia is led into an ancient labyrinth by a fairy, where she meets a faun who thinks she's the reincarnation of a fairy tale princess whose father is the king of the underworld. Eventually, Ophelia's fantasy world begins to clash with the horrors of her real world, and it all kind of unfolds in terrible and haunting ways. If this list was by most haunting, Pan's Labyrinth would probably be number 1, if not number 1. It's intensely haunting. It sticks with me still to this day. Marks the third time that frequent collaborator Doug Jones and Del Toro worked together. Just a side note. I would say it's got to be Ivana Baquero's Ophelia as the standout performance. She, again, there's not a bad performance in the flick, but she, as the young girl, man alive. Like, that's part of the reason it's so haunting. Number 3 is going to be the first Del Toro flick I ever saw, which caused me to seek out everything he'd made prior to it. And that's 2002's Blade 2. It's a comic book flick, sequel to Blade, obviously. Starred Wesley Snipes, Ron Perlman, Leonor Varela, and Luke Goss. Takes place almost immediately after the events, or maybe a year or so after the first film. Blade's hunting for his mentor. Chris Christopherson played Abraham Whistler, who Blade thought was dead after the events of the first movie. During his hunting, he stumbles across a pandemic that is turning vampires into reapers, which are like ravenous, almost zombie-like mutants that just have a rabid need to feed. One of the vampire overlords sends his daughter to call a truce with Blade, and the hunt begins. Special effects for the Reavers are insane. Like, it's the best reimagining of vampires to date, as far as I'm concerned. It's the second time that another frequent collaborator of Del Toro's, Ron Perlman, worked together. The vampire pack that like builds, they've been built to take on Blade. Now they're teaming up with him to figure out what's going on with these Reapers. I mean, the cast is insane from just that. I mean, you've got Donnie Yen, Tony Curran, and Norman Reedus is in the flick. And I mean, he's not one of the vampire pack, but he's really, really good too. Stand-up performance in this one, though, I gotta give to Luke Goss. Like, he's kind of the head Reaper, but he's maintained clarity, and it's powerful stuff. He's fantastic performance. All right, number 2, 2004's Hellboy. Another comic book flick, this one starring Ron Perlman, Selma Blair, Doug Jones, all those frequent collaborators again. It's the origin story of a demon with a right hand made of stone, who's raised by an English scientist, and as an adult joins the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, aka BPRD, to face down the creatures of the night. His team, as an adult, including a psychic amphibian humanoid and an unstable pyrokinetic, have to take down a reincarnated Grigory Rasputin to stop him from ending the world, like you do. I had already loved Hellboy, the comic. I'd already loved Ron Perlman, who, when I read the comic, oddly enough, that's whose voice I pictured, or, that it sounded like, Hellboy's voice sounded like. So anyway, that mixed with Del Toro, who at this point now I was already digging. Tons of Lovecraftian touches. Like, I couldn't wait for this flick to come out whenever it was announced and I saw the trailers, and I wasn't disappointed. The standout performance in this one, though, was actually, I gotta give to Selma Blair. Like, the arc of watching her have these powers, be scared of these powers, and then through the course of the movie, watching her grow into the powers was awesome. I mean, her arc was the most interesting in a movie filled with interesting arcs to me. All right, so I'm a sucker for giant monsters. I'm a sucker for giant robots. So it's no surprise that my number 1 pick is Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim 2013 is when it came out. Sci-fi monster film starring Charlie Hunnam, Idris Elba, Rinko Kikuchi. Basically, giant monsters called kaiju are coming into our world from theirs through an interdimensional portal at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. That's the name. Humanity, in an effort to save ourselves from this situation, constructs giant robots called Jaegers to fight the aliens. Jaeger piloting involves multiple pilots, typically 2 to 3 to a Jaeger. and they form kind of a mental link to kind of plug into everything and control the robots. The monsters just keep coming, bigger, tougher, faster with each wave of attack, and humanity's run out of options. That's the plot. There's so many subtle effects, which is a staple of Del Toro's flicks, but like the way each Jaeger functions just a little bit differently. And it showcases the area of the world that particular Jaeger comes from. The way each individual kaiju is genetically structured so that it makes sense that it would attack in the way that it does. Just brilliant work all around. Standout performance. I can't pick one. I mean, it's just everybody, there was nobody that stood out. They're all awesome performances. So I'm gonna pick a scene. The standout favorite scene of this one, probably the path to the breach, which is what they called the portal where the kaiju were coming through. There's an entire sequence. It's right up there with, the trench and the Death Star. Like they've got to make their way. They get within the last, so much, and things just keep falling apart, and just there's so many awesome things. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't. But anyway, Pacific Rim, #1. And that's it. That's my Mind of 5, top 5 Guillermo del Toro flicks. Hope you enjoyed, and we will be back again together the next time. We've got a couple of things lined up here, Daniel and I. But go ahead and tell me what your top 5 Guillermo del Toro flicks are, or if you haven't seen them, they're all readily available. There's not a bad one in the list. This is my top 5, but I actually don't have any Del Toro flicks that left me disappointed. They're all streamable for the most part, I believe. Though if you get Mimic, get the director's cut, because the studio butchered Mimic, and the director's cut much better. And that's all I've got. So again, like, subscribe, share, do all the things, and then let us know below, or wherever you see this posted, where you're at, where you stand on this. Till next time.